Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sierra Smith. I'm a seven-figure Etsy optimization specialist, business analyst, and Etsy consultant who has scaled 200 plus Etsy shops with top clientele to 2.6 million plus in revenue. And I'm here to bring this very niche expertise to YouTube. I've been doing this since 2019. I stare at Etsy for 30 plus hours each week. I work directly with clients, and we have coined a lot of different data-driven methodologies to actually scale these businesses. This is my team and I, OptiShop Solutions LLC, and all of our methodologies are very data-driven. They're target customer-centric, and I'm just big into actually diving into data and analytics to guide business decisions. So everything that I'm mentioning in this video is very much so validated strategies that have scaled these businesses. And all my links are down below: portfolio, case studies, testimonials, actual business website, and then contact. So if you want to get in contact, hop on a call. Happy to craft a roadmap to turn things around for your shop as well. And again, everything is data driven. That's kind of the name of the game here. So if you're here, you are here for the unfortunate circumstance that your Etsy sales have dropped. So in this video, we're going to be touching on why your Etsy sales have dropped. And I did kind of look a bit on YouTube to see what kind of information is out there right now. And I just felt like I had to make this video because it looked like certain reasons were not necessarily being mentioned. And I do think that I know for sure these are the most important things, because naturally, as an Etsy consultant and optimization specialist, people come to me to turn their sales around. I've had really, large shops reach out because their sales have dropped, drastically declined. They don't know why. So I've had to dive into these kind of many times over the years. So we're gonna dive right into it. So the first and foremost reason that your Etsy sales have dropped, there are three primary things that I'm going to be touching on this video. I will say three primary reasons, but I want to touch on this one first because it's so important. And I see a lot of people kind of overlooking this fact, is that you have higher converting competitors. Now, Etsy SEO, which is how they define how they're going to essentially rank your listings in search, is largely defined by listing quality score, which is largely defined by conversion rate and sales history. So if you have competitors that are getting lots and lots of sales, lots of conversions, making Etsy lots of money, then Etsy is always going to push their listings more in search than they're going to do for your listings that are not making lots of sales, not getting lots of conversions. So if at one point your listings were getting lots of conversions and now they're not, and because essentially these competitors are making more conversions, they just have very high converting listings, very high converting, I'd say, search facing perspectives. So like the advertisements for listings are just a lot more enticing than your listings. Those competitors are going to be outranking you, and that can be a really big reason why your sales have dropped. So that's kind of how I always approach essentially like a project or a revamp. It's just a gap analysis. In this case, it's actually going to be like a value gap analysis. We're figuring out where is the perceived value gap, because if you have higher converting competitors, they typically have higher perceived value, especially from search. So that can be the listing's cover photo primarily. What are they communicating from that cover photo? What personalization, what customization, what designs, is it, where is it made? What is it made from? There's so many different things that they could be communicating. They could say fast shipping, 2-day shipping. They could be literally in text as a text overlay. They could be mentioning something that is just, it could not even be clearly communicated within a visual. So they're just doing a lot of different things, essentially like value stack right there from their listings search facing perspective. But typically it's not just that, it's also the entry level price point. So not only is their perceived value really, really high, high quality hardwood, personalized, 12 different design styles, but they are also selling at a lower price point, at least from search. So their entry level price point, it can be very strategic. It could be like the non-customized variation. It could be a really, really, really small size. Whatever they're doing, they've probably split tested to figure out what actually works the best and still leads to a lot of conversions. But their price point, the perceived value of their listing as a whole, is higher than that price point. That's typically why they're getting lots of clicks and lots of conversions. And on Etsy, where pretty much the biggest competitive advantage among target customers across basically every single market is customization and personalization. Typically, if your competitors are showcasing more options, more forms of personalization, more forms of customization from Etsy search, so on that cover photo, typically they are going to perform better. Now, there's so much more that could go into that. It could be kind of layered into that. It could be, of course, the actual design styles. If they've done that market research, or they've done the research to their own shop's data, and they know which design styles lead to the most conversions, which on Etsy does tend to be typically a bit more like boho or retro or even like vintage slash primitive style. it really depends on the exact market. Sometimes it's slightly more like nature-esque. They kind of show those designs from the listing's cover photo. That can actually be like a really, really big indicator that that listing is going to outperform. But it comes with so many other layers as well, assuming they also have a high average star rating, they have a high number of views. All of that's going to factor into why that listing is out converting your listings. And there's not, no, I'm not going to say nothing, but at that point, that's going to be the primary indicator in terms of why Etsy is going to outrank your competitors over you. So it's just going to be a matter of you closing that gap in perceived value, and essentially beating them in perceived value from search, and ideally maybe even being strategic with that entry level price point, maybe optimizing the shipping range, so having a lower minimum ship date even if your maximum ship date stays the same. It's just different things to show up more competitively, typically from search, but still when they do click into the listing as well. Now, there's another really big aspect in terms of why they would be outranking you, and it can also be the fact that not only is that listing converting really well, but it is actually exact matching for the keywords that are bringing the most traffic to your listings. So let's say this is a very real example. So like personalized growth chart. I have one of my seven-figure clients that sell growth charts that are personalized for essentially families and kids, height charts, kind of whatever you want to call it. So let's say personalized growth chart is bringing in a lot of traffic to their shop. So let's say we go into Etsy incognito mode to run a search so that none of our past search behavior or engagement behavior is factoring into the search results, which is how it does work on Etsy if you were logged into an account. So we're going into an incognito mode, and then we're going to run a search for personalized growth chart. And then at that point, we can look at our competitors. And if they are exact matching for that query, personalized growth chart, they've explicitly typed out that query within their title, especially in this case, because that keyword is longer than 20 characters, we're pretty much just looking at their title in this case. If it was shorter than 20 characters, you could also be looking at their tags. But you might also want to look at the beginning of their description as well. It matters a whole lot less than the title does, but you could definitely get a feel in terms of what are they exact matching for within like their different SEO spaces, like pretty much like the first 150 characters of the description. You can also be looking for that keyword as well, but title is typically like the biggest indicator. So if they have personalized growth chart within their title, and let's say that keyword is bringing a lot of traffic to your shop, but your top listing that it's being viewed for is exact matching for personalized growth height chart, then you're not actually exact matching for that keyword that's bringing in all those views. That keyword, that listing is exact matching for that keyword, and in Etsy's eyes, that means that that listing is actually more relevant than your listing for that keyword. So at that point, it's going to be a matter of also SEO and just actually pulling the keywords from your shop's internal stats. If you're an existing shop in Etsy, which, while you're watching this, you have existing data, ideally even ads, keywords that you could pull from, you're going to have a lot of data to work with, and you want to essentially use those keywords. You want to run searches for those keywords that are bringing in lots and lots of traffic to your shop, especially if you're kind of noticing that there's a gap. It's getting views, it's not getting conversions, or especially if it's getting clicks but then it's not getting conversions. You want to understand, where is that gap? What are customers' expectations when they're running that search? What are they seeing when they're running that search? And what are your competitors looking like side by side your listings, so you can understand why a customer would click into a competitor's listing over yours. And then that'll make it a little bit easier to close that gap. Now, I will say AI can help a lot with this. I am a big fan of ChatGPT Pro. I will say kind of, if you can take screenshots of your competitors side by side yours, you can fully copy the text copy of your listing, and then fully copy the text copy if your top competitors are actually making consistent sales or more sales than you are. And you can kind of run those gap analyses, and you can figure out where the opportunities being left open, how are customers currently not being served. And you can definitely, I'm a big fan of analyzing customer reviews. That is going to be your highest value data. Analyze their customer reviews. You can analyze your own customer reviews, and you can understand what marketing points are the most important to communicate from search. So on that cover photo, the beginning of the title, the entry level price point, you can kind of define what is actually most important, again, to communicate essentially from those spaces. I'm going to kind of layer in this sub point with like this first overarching point, that you also need to get a feel for if your competitors are actually making sales. Sometimes there is some seasonality with your market. So that's going to be something that you kind of want to track as well. If your sales are down and your competitors' sales are also down, then that means kind of like it's just down, like traffic is down. But if your sales are down and your competitors are not down, then that's where we're really going to notice that there is a gap. So I would definitely say when you're clicking into these best selling competitor listings, when you run some of these searches, to also look at how many like essentially items sold in that last day. It'll have a label right there on listing, 3 sold in the last day, or it'll scroll down to the bottom of the listing. You see, did it last sell today? Did it last sell yesterday? And you can also use erank.com to actually track the sales of some of your top competitors. That's something a lot of clients will use. They just use erank.com to track it for them. And that's pretty practical. Easy way to do it. You could also manually track it. So if you wanted to run a search, essentially not run a search, but you kind of just want to manually track each day. You type in your competitor, your top competitor shop link, and then you just look at how many sales they have today, and then you can maybe track it for like 7 days to 14 days, just kind of how long whatever your period has, you've been down, and you can essentially track that. And you can see, like, are they growing at a rate that's faster than the rate that I'm growing at? Like, is their sales count going up? And that can be a really, really big indicator of, is the market down? Just like as a brief example, I have this search page up here. I'm in incognito mode. Just ran a search, just baby keepsake box. I have another client who optimizes for this. And so let's say we're going to click into a listing. We just want to see how many times it's sold in the last day. Etsy's just going to place a label on that listing, and it would kind of give us a feeling for how many times the listing has sold in the last day. So essentially this label right here would be telling us if it last sold like 2 times or 3 times or anything more than that in the last day. And if you also scroll down to the bottom of the listing, it'll tell you when it last sold. We see that it last sold on today's date, where it says listed on and then date. So that does kind of give us a feel, okay, this listing is at least, it's still selling. This listing is in 20 plus carts. And I also have Everbee's Chrome extension installed. So I'm also able to see monthly sales. And that could be pretty helpful as well, just for understanding if the listing is still getting a lot of sales. Now, what I'm really a huge fan of for performance tracking is Everbee's newer features. If you click on Analyze Listing, if you have the Chrome extension installed, I'm not sponsored by Everbee, but I love this tool as a whole. So once you open up Analyze, you can scroll down, and then they show trends. They say it's beta, but it can give you a lot of really valuable insights. So we're seeing growth rate is 140%, rate of change for the selected period. We see its last 30 days, and we're seeing that it's an upward trend. So that's really, really helpful, again, for just getting a better feel for, is the market still just, lots of demand, lots of sales. And we see it is an upward trend, 236 sales over the last month. So this in itself, the fact that it has a growth rate in itself is pretty much an indicator that the market is still doing well. And that can help you to gauge, like, do I need to be doing work to optimize all my listings to be higher converting, higher sales, higher clicks. I like Everbee for like a snapshot assessment of the search results as well. So you'll also see that it's showing stats underneath each listing. We see monthly sales 4, 15, 25, 48, 6, 126, 75, 9. So we're getting an understanding from search as well that these listings have been selling decently consistently over this last month as well. And, relative to your own market, you can kind of decide how significant certain numbers are. The next points are going to be a lot shorter than essentially that first large point, but if your sales have dropped, it could also be a matter of Etsy ads. So in conjunction, typically with competitors that are converting really, really well, that are doing lots of things right, typically they are using Etsy ads, and more times than not. And it could just be an issue that they're using Etsy ads and you're not using Etsy ads. So they're always going to outrank you, at least on that very first row, which is always just ads, or just, anywhere within the first page, lots of ads. There are always lots of ads on Etsy search. So they might just be outranking you because they're either using Etsy ads and you're not using Etsy ads, or their budget is higher than yours. So they'll still outrank you as ads. And it does, again, come back to the fact that they are getting lots of conversions, because that's going to define why Etsy is going to continue to push that ad. And then it is going to come back to the fact that they are exact matching for keywords that are bringing them in lots of searches, or they're just optimized for a lot of really relevant keywords, and they're giving Etsy a lot to work with. Now, SEO on Etsy, you should be prioritizing more diversified keywords. They tell you this within the Etsy seller handbook, so that you are able to be seen for more keywords. And Etsy's going to do a lot of work, especially as ads, to show your listings to a vast assortment of different keywords that are created by the keywords that you've optimized that listing for. So their listings are typically really optimized optimized for very relevant keywords. They're giving it a lot to work with the very diverse keywords that they're optimized for. Typically, they have nice long titles. They have all 13 tags being used, and the even ideal is that they're using the beginning of the description as well. Now, this is not true for every single top competitor, but it does give them a better chance to really be outranking you, and for Etsy ads to really work really well for them. And again, this does go back to the listings already typically being higher converting listings that are just really set up well to convert. And then the last point is algorithm changes. The algorithm on Etsy is always changing. Etsy is always testing new things. That's just the name of the game on Etsy. They're always testing something. They tested gifting mode last year. They test a lot of different factors. So sometimes the issue can just be that it's an algorithm change. And in that case, there's not a whole lot you can do other than just try to stay up to date with the actual changes. I wouldn't really say to make a whole lot of changes to your listing, really make any changes to your listings just based on the algorithm change, because there's a good chance Etsy will change it back. And they're testing different things. You have to kind of essentially within those new periods give your listings sometimes essentially like acclimate to the new algorithm. Now, I would always say to try to stay updated. Like when they changed the descriptions back in 2022, when they made that actually matter for SEO, these are things that you should really know as a seller so that you can give your listings the best fighting chance. So that can be the last thing, is that the algorithm has changed, and it's just the criteria for why listings are ranking highly. It's just changed. Like they started factoring in more customer service stats. I would just say to get educated on that. The Etsy Seller Handbook, it'll tell you like if you're really, a lot of your listings are shipping on time, you are shipping quickly, like under 4 days within the US, you're shipping for I think like less than $6.99 to the US. There are different random things that factor into why listings are selling better. If you have like the shipping guarantee, if it's over $35 to the US, you have to offer free shipping. Etsy tells you that these things will factor into your search ranking. So I would just say to stay up to date on those algorithm changes and then do what you can to try to kind of line your listings up, but give it some time. I would say give it like a month to really make sure that the change is going to stick, and then you can go in and start making those changes to your listing. Now that time frame is not a catch-all, but you can kind of use that as a bit of a guide. Name of the game, I want to just boil it back down to you really want to do what you can to close any kind of value gaps between your competitors and your listings. At the end of the day, if you have listings that are leading to lots and lots of conversions, Etsy's going to do everything it can to continue to push your listings, to show your listings for a lot of different keywords, like keywords that you have not optimized your listing for, synonyms, like just they're going to be doing a lot of work to show your listings. So you want to ultimately focus on your listings being the highest converting. So typically that's your visuals. I will say your visuals need to do the talking on Etsy. They need to be very, very high value. They need to communicate lots of value. They need to make it very, very clear what your different options are, your different forms of personalization. Maybe you have different woods, different colors. They just need to be very, very value communicative. Your cover photo, typically adding in some text overlays can go a really, really long way. Again, pulling it back from that customer reviews analysis, getting some inspiration from some bestsellers in the space. You really just want to make sure your listings are doing lots of talking and communicating lots of value, and your visuals are so high visibility on Etsy. That's why I just stress that you need to do like that research. You need to better understand your target customer and then redo your visuals. That's typically going to be the biggest impact on your conversion rate. I would say even offering a satisfaction guarantee, a safe shipping guarantee, whatever makes sense for your market, just to essentially remove any risk from your customer making that purchase, and that'll lead to a lot more sales if you have some kind of guarantee in place that is actually like effective, like love it in 30 days or return the item and get your money back. But that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. My team will do all of these things for you. We handle all the analyses. We'll dive into your data for you, SWOT tests, competitor analysis, keyword analysis, all the gap analysis, market analysis. We'll do it all for you. We'll define the strategy, and then we'll actually implement everything for you. New visuals, new SEO, new price points with your approval, new sales strategies, scarcity tactics, whatever you're open to doing, we will do that for your shop. So definitely get in contact if you're interested. Again, that link is down below, optishopsolutions.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified of future videos, and we will